Hi there. So I was really excited to get the approval from Chris to do my presentation on the Paralympics. So I wanted to share with you all the history of the Paralympics and a bit about where it's at now. Although athletes with impairments have been part of the sporting landscape for more than a century, it wasn't until after World War II that participation in these sports was more widespread. In 1944, Dr. Ludwig Gutmann opened a clinic for patients with spinal injuries at Stoke Mandeville Hospital in Great Britain. This center operated at the request of the British government. The same day as the 1948 London Olympic Games opening ceremony, the Stoke Mandeville Games were created by Dr. Gutmann. This was a milestone in Paralympic history, being the first competition for wheelchair athletes. The first Stoke Mandeville Games showcased 16 injured servicemen and women competing in archery. 4 years later, a team from the Netherlands joined the British athletes, marking the first international competition. 8 years after that, in 1960, the first Paralympic Games were held in Rome. There were 400 athletes from 23 countries who competed in 8 sports: archery, para-athletics, dartchery, snooker, para-swimming, table tennis, wheelchair fencing, and wheelchair basketball. The Paralympics run every 4 years, with the number of athletes, sports, and sport classes increasing throughout the years. At the 2020 Paralympics in Tokyo, there were 4,403 athletes from 162 countries and committees that competed in 22 sports and 23 disciplines. There was almost an 11% increase of female athletes from Rio in 2016 to Tokyo in 2020. In 1976, the first Winter Paralympic Games took place in Erdsköldsvik, Sweden. There were 53 athletes from 16 countries who competed in 2 sports: alpine and cross-country skiing. The Winter Paralympics are also held every 4 years. Since the Seoul 1988 Paralympics and the Albertville 1992 Winter Paralympics, the same cities and venues are used for the Olympics and the Paralympics. Paralympics has become one of the most popular sporting events in the world. The International Paralympic Committee was created in Dusseldorf, Germany in September 1989. It is an international nonprofit organization, and it oversees the Paralympic movement. So my family and I were blessed with the opportunity to meet Ryan Nicewander several years ago through FCA. Ryan is an American wheelchair basketball player. He played at the University of Illinois and is a member of the United States men's wheelchair basketball team. He represented the U.S. at the 2020 Paralympics and helped his team bring home the gold. I was able to reach out to Ryan to ask him a few questions for this presentation, and he was kind enough to get back to me. So I asked him if he was aware of the Paralympic Games while he was growing up, and if he was, what kind of an impact did they have on him? His answer to me was, "I wasn't aware of the Paralympics until I was introduced to wheelchair basketball when I was 8 years old. As I grew within the sport, it was clear that the Paralympics were the epitome of one's career. Most kids dream to go to the NBA when they are younger, but when I fell in love with wheelchair basketball, my dream was to go to the Paralympics. Growing up, the Paralympics weren't promoted on TV, so awareness came by word of mouth within my sport. What excites me about the future is how so many companies and organizations are bringing the Paralympics to the spotlight. Also, another cool fact is that legislation was passed to ensure that Paralympians won the same amount of money as Olympians when they won a medal. Previously, that wasn't the case, but in the 2020 Games, there was equity between the winnings for athletes in the U.S., which I think is awesome. So I would also like to encourage you all to watch the 2022 Winter Paralympics, which will be held March 4th to March 13th in Beijing. It will be showcasing 78 events in 5 sports. Thank you.